I can still remember, I remember her name and I remember what she said. One of them says, well, he can write. But I was clearly the first black boy that they had had any time, any exposure, anything with, in any way, shape, or form. School was important because I grew up with a mom who said school was important. I mean, in her room were these big floor-to-ceiling bookcases full of books, so she was a woman fully immersed in the life of the mind, and she didn't have to hold a stick over my head. It was just understood that it was important. And she worked tirelessly on my behalf and then on my sister's behalf, worked tirelessly. She wound up ushering me into Yale. When I started school, she decided that she was going to go back to school to finish her BA. And then she decided she was going to go and get her master's. So technically, I was slated to be the first Ivy League graduate in my family, but she beat me to it.
I always felt that if you want children who are well-rounded and intellectually curious, you have to engage or at least expose them to what is happening in the world. I thought it was very important for my children to see and understand about the world outside of their home, outside of their community. And the way of exposing them to that world was this city. By the time he was enrolled in the parish school, I think that there was one other black family with a daughter in attendance at the entire school.
So I was so foreign to them that I was doing some kind of writing assignment and we left and all our books were there at the table. When I came back, they were all gathered around mine, at least 5 of them. And I can still remember, I remember her name and I remember what she said. One of them says, well, he can write.
What I noticed about Philip was that it was important for me to feed that natural curiosity that he had. And so weekends became a way of accomplishing that by looking at the offerings that the city had at all of its cultural institutions and using those exhibits as a classroom.
She took it upon herself to do the stuff that my guidance counselor didn't do. So she called these colleges. She called Harvard, she called Yale, she called MIT, called Brown, Notre Dame, said, send me these applications. And they came in and she said, you're gonna fill out all these applications. I did not want to do it. Didn't think I was gonna get into those schools. I just didn't really care. I got in. I got into those places. Notre Dame found out somehow or the other that my geometry teacher was an alum, so they sent him back to take me out to dinner to Pizza Hut of all places, which just was the biggest deal to me. That was like fine dining for me. I was like, done, Notre Dame, no questions asked about it. Told my mom, I'm going to Notre Dame. She said, you're going to at least visit one of these other schools. She said I had to do it. It was not a discussion. It wasn't a suggestion. So I went up and I was supposed to stay at Yale for some weekend, like one weekend. And that weekend turned into a week. I remember calling my mom saying I'm staying. By the time I left there, I didn't think about any other place. Faster or slower? The number one influence is just realizing how important constant dedication to the well-being and development of your kids is, because that's what I had. And that's the biggest thing I bring from my childhood to each one of the 6. So that's the biggest thing, just that dedication in service of your kid, whatever that means.
You have to find ways to live in this world in spite of what other people feel towards you. You don't owe your existence to someone else and how they feel about you.
Our achievement should not be misread or be allowed to be misused as emblematic that this country's race problem is solved. It's not. It has always been the case, though, that as a basic tradition in our community, a choice has been made to not let that problem deprive us of living fully human lives that might look like two entrepreneurs with a strong, intact marriage and kids that we love and businesses that have good reputations and college degrees. It might look like that. That's what a fully human life can look like, among other things. But as a tradition, we come from a group of people that have decided not to be denied that. And just because we achieve it doesn't mean that the problem never existed. If anything, it means that the achievement is that much more great.
So what class you started today?
My writing class, my Spanish class, and my philosophy class.
Oh, wow. 3 classes, pretty cool. We officially got a Georgetown student. Yeah.
Fatir and Maun Muhammad are like any teenage siblings. They're competitive.
I plan on being the first person in my family to graduate college. When I graduated from high school, my GPA was a 4.3, and I graduated as the valedictorian of my class.
Fatir graduated as valedictorian for his 8th grade class, but I graduated as salutatorian, right? He's not a full valedictorian because he had like 4 other people who was tied with him. You're not a real valedictorian, you just 1/25th of a valedictorian.
Their parents have worked hard to stoke competitiveness and keep them focused on the future. But these 2 teens are wide awake to the reality of the world outside their family.
Program-wise and curriculum-wise, it's a decent school, but like resource-wise, compared to other white neighborhoods, it's not as funded. Black people not having enough resources for the school. So like at my school, we didn't have enough textbooks, and there was times where we didn't have like AC or heat in the classrooms, which is a product of systemic racism.
Little subconscious things that sort of makes you see like, if this is an all-black school, why can't we have black teachers, whatever? If you don't see people who's teaching, who's successful, you know, it sort of subconsciously tells other black students that like, oh, I can't be a teacher because I'm black, or it's just a little subconscious thing that sort of makes you like feel lower than other races.
The inequality in the education between black and white students is often viewed from a lens of poverty versus privilege. Non-white school districts receive $23 billion less than white districts, even though they're serving the same number of students. But it's not just factors outside the classroom causing the education gap. It's also how black kids are treated in the classroom, where researchers have repeatedly found that in the American public school system, black students are suspended 3.4 times more often than white students. White students are placed in gifted programs in American schools 3.2 times more than black students. Black students were 1.1 times more likely to be placed in a special education class at their school, and in pivotal younger grades, black students get held back in 2nd grade more than 2 times as often as white students.
I think that's the reason why I do have to go as far as I can. You know, I do have to get to the best college I can. I do have to do all these things, so I can't show people that you can do it because you're black, you know? I have to like face the challenges now so that other people, other generations, my children, so forth and so on, they won't have to face it, you know? It's sort of a responsibility that I have.
Some people might say I'm at a disadvantage. I don't really think so. It's really based on how hard you push yourself. You can't really complain about what you got. You just gotta work with it, basically.
Throw the ball. Dang, I didn't say bullet it to me. Shoot.
The Los Angeles Unified School District is the 2nd largest public school system in the country, serving more than 600,000 students attending more than 1,000 schools.
My name is Adana Brown. I am the local District West superintendent in LA Unified. Both my parents were from the South, so they had those interactions in terms of prejudice and racism. And coming from Georgia or Louisiana to California, my parents experienced the integration. They had their school burned down as a result of integration. Just really having those conversations with my brothers, you know, while they're out, while they're driving, especially when they first got their cars, their licenses, what to do when you get stopped by police, what to do when you're out and about. My dad was big on, making sure that you respect authority because, he didn't ever want anything to happen to his kids while they were out of his care. Back then it was, even though we got to a place of integration, there was, segregation was kind of going away, but we live in a very segregated community. Carson was very segregated. I went to private school. It was all white school in an all white neighborhood. By the time I started to get to 4th grade, I begged my mom to let me go to the local public school, which is right up the street. Just because I started to come into my own. I started to know that I wanted to be around people who looked like me. When I had to really reflect on, wow, I never had a black teacher. And I don't know what that would have been like. I always wondered what would it have been like for me to have a mentor, to have somebody that I looked up to that looked like me. And I think that's why it's so important even now for us to make sure we hire and retain black teachers. That's so important. Growing up, to not see somebody that looks like you, you look up to other people. You start looking for other things. I had to stay in school. I love school. I love learning. I took my kid with me to UCLA. I found a child care center on UCLA's campus. My dad he was a little upset with me. He didn't talk to me for a couple weeks. And he got me in the car. He drove me to the welfare office and dropped me off. And he was like, I'll be back. He was like, you're going to get on welfare. You're going to handle this yourself. At the end of the day, I had to do what I had to do with my kid. Through welfare, I was able to pay for my kid's child care. I was able to, get an apartment. I was able to just live. Even though I live with my parents, they let me know that they weren't going to support me financially at all. They weren't going to watch my kid. I wasn't going to be the one dropping my kid off and going in the streets. And so it was me and him every step of the way. And so really showing him this is what hard works look like. When I walked across the stage at UCLA, he walked across the stage with me. And so really just instilling in him that this is hard work, this is what struggle looks like, this is what that perseverance looks like, this is what we're going to get through together.
It's just been a huge inspiration to see a single teenage mother at that, go on to do what she's done and get her bachelor's, master's, doctorate, become a principal, become a superintendent for, LAUSD, and it's just inspiring, I guess. I could never pay that back to her, no matter how much money I ever get, you know what I'm saying?
Our goal right now is to be unapologetic about how we service our black kids. Black kids are the lowest performing kids in our district, in our state. They are the most highly referred to special ed, highly suspended, and so it's time to really start to look at our different cultures. There are so many different cultures in LA, as I mentioned. We're a mixture of so many different things, and so we have to begin to teach the different curriculums. We have to lean ourselves into that, so that way everybody can feel valued. We don't want compliant children, right? We want children who are going to question the thinking. We want children who are going to push the envelope on why we're doing what we're doing. I think our kids are going to be so much more at an advantage just because they really are understanding why they're learning, why they're doing what they're doing, and they're having conversations in class. They're in groups, they're in pods, they're not just in silos, and they're really listening to each other. They're going to be good listeners. And we teach our kids, don't just wait for your turn, right? Because a lot of times we're listening to people, we're not really listening. We're waiting for our turn to speak and processing what we're gonna say. But I never heard you, right? But we want our kids listen to what the person is saying, repeat what they said so that they validate it. And I think we don't do enough of that in our society. We don't validate people enough. We don't hear them enough. And so we're creating those types of thinkers. A lot of times we want to ignore the stories that have happened in the past, and we can't keep ignoring it. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about the hurt, right? And the pain has to come out so strong that people really feel it, whether this happens to them or not. And we can grow from it, because we can't heal or grow if we don't address it. If we don't know where we've been, we don't know where we're going.